The clock on the wall showed 7:30 p.m., and Romano's restaurant was buzzing with activity. This wasn't just any ordinary place to eat. Romano's was the kind of restaurant where people came to be seen, where a single dinner could cost more than what most people spent on food in a month. The walls were covered in rich mahogany wood, and crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling like expensive jewelry, casting a warm golden glow over everything. Maya walked quickly between the tables, carrying a tray of champagne glasses that sparkled under the lights. At 24 years old, she had been working at Romano's for almost 2 years now. Her black uniform was always perfectly pressed, her hair neatly pulled back, and her smile never seemed to fade, even when her feet were killing her from standing for hours. But what the customers didn't know was that Maya had a secret. Every morning before her shift, she would spend 3 hours at the music school practicing piano. Her fingers, the same ones that now carried expensive plates and wiped down tables, could dance across piano keys like magic. She was just 4 months away from graduating from one of the country's best music schools. The restaurant was packed. Tonight. At table 3, a famous lawyer was celebrating winning a big case. Table 7 had a group of doctors discussing their latest medical conference. And in the corner booth, a retired judge was having dinner with his wife for their anniversary. These were the kind of people who tipped well if you did everything perfectly, but could make your life miserable if you made even the smallest mistake. Maya had learned to read people quickly in this job. She could tell who would be kind and patient, and who would treat her like she was invisible. Tonight, she noticed a new customer being seated at table 12. The host, Antonio, was practically bowing as he showed the man to his seat. That meant this person was either very important or very wealthy, maybe both. The man looked to be in his 50s, with silver hair slicked back perfectly and an expensive suit that probably cost more than Maya made in 3 months. His shoes were polished to a mirror shine, and his watch caught the light every time he moved his wrist. 2 other men in similar expensive suits joined him at the table. They all had that look that rich people get when they know they're the most important people in the room. Maya grabbed her notepad and walked over to their table. She had served hundreds of wealthy customers before, and she knew the routine. Be polite, be invisible when they wanted to talk business, and never, ever give them a reason to complain. "Good evening, gentlemen," Maya said with her practiced smile. "Welcome to Romano's. Can I start you off with something to drink tonight?" The man, who seemed to be the leader of the group, barely looked up at her. He was busy looking at his phone, typing messages with one finger while talking to his friends about some business deal involving millions of dollars. Maya stood there, patiently, waiting for him to acknowledge her presence. After what felt like forever, he finally looked up. His eyes were cold and calculating, the kind of eyes that saw everything in terms of money and power. "What's your most expensive wine?" he asked, not as if he actually wanted to know, but as if he was testing her. Maya had memorized the wine list months ago. "We have a 1982 Bordeaux for $800 a bottle, sir. It's considered one of our finest selections." The man smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. It was the kind of smile that made Maya feel uncomfortable, like he was enjoying some private joke that she wasn't part of. "Bring us 3 bottles, he said, then added, "I hope you can handle carrying that much at once." His 2 friends chuckled at this comment, and Maya felt her cheeks get warm. But she kept her professional smile in place. "Of course, sir. I'll have those right out for you." As she walked away from the table, Maya could hear them talking about her. "These people have no idea how to handle real money," one of them said. "Probably never seen a bottle of wine that costs more than $20. Maya tried to ignore the comments, but they stung. She had grown up in a small apartment with her mother, who worked 2 jobs just to pay the rent. Every dollar Maya made at Romano's went toward her school fees and helping her mom with bills. She wasn't working here because she loved serving rude customers. She was working here because she had dreams that cost money. In the wine storage room, Maya carefully selected the 3 bottles they had ordered. Each bottle was worth more than what she made in a week, and she handled them like precious treasures. She couldn't afford to drop even one. When she returned to table 12, the conversation stopped. All 3 men watched her as she presented the first bottle for approval. The leader of the group took the bottle and examined the label like he was some kind of expert, even though Maya suspected he probably couldn't tell good wine from bad wine if his life depended on it. "This will do," he said, handing the bottle back to her. "Try not to spill any when you pour it." Maya opened the bottle with practiced skill and poured a small amount for him to taste. He swirled it around in his glass, took a sip, and made a face like he was thinking very hard about something important. Finally, he nodded his approval. As Maya poured wine for all three men, she could feel them watching her every move. It was like they were waiting for her to make a mistake, so they could have something to complain about. She finished pouring without spilling a single drop and stepped back. "Will you be ready to order your food soon, or would you like a few more minutes?" Maya asked politely. "We'll order when we're ready," the man replied curtly. "Don't hover around our table. We'll call you when we need you." Maya nodded and walked away, but she could still hear their conversation. They were talking about a big real estate deal, something about buying up old buildings and turning them into expensive condos. The way they talked about it, it sounded like they didn't care much about the people who currently lived in those buildings. The evening continued like this, with Maya checking on other tables while keeping an eye on table 12. Every time she approached them, she felt like she was walking into a lion's den. They had a way of making her feel small and unimportant, like she was just part of the furniture. Other customers that night were much nicer. The retired judge and his wife complimented Maya on her excellent service. The group of doctors asked her about her studies when they noticed her textbook sticking out of her apron pocket during a quiet moment. Even the famous lawyer, who had a reputation for being difficult, was polite and respectful. But table 12 was different. Every interaction felt like a test that she was destined to fail. When they finally ordered their food, they sent back the first course claiming it was too cold. Then they complained that the second course was too hot. Maya apologized each time and had the kitchen prepare new dishes. Even though she suspected nothing was actually wrong with the food, the other servers started to notice what was happening. Lisa, who had been working at Romano's for 5 years, pulled Maya aside during a quiet moment. "Don't let them get to you," Lisa whispered. "Some people come here just to feel powerful by treating us badly. It's not about you, it's about them." Maya appreciated the support, but she couldn't shake the feeling that tonight was going to be different somehow. There was something about the way the man at table 12 looked at her, like he was planning something. She had learned to trust her instincts in this job, and right now, those instincts were telling her to be very careful. The trouble started small, the way most terrible things do. Maya was refilling water glasses at table 12 when the wealthy man held up his hand to stop her. "This water tastes funny," he announced loudly, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "What kind of establishment serves tap water to paying customers?" Maya looked at the expensive bottled water she had just poured from a crystal pitcher. It was the same premium water they served to every table, the kind that cost $12 a bottle. "Sir, this is our filtered spring water from the French Alps. Would you prefer sparkling water instead?" The man picked up his glass and examined it like he was a scientist studying something disgusting under a microscope. "I don't think you understand quality when you see it," he said, setting the glass down with unnecessary force. "Bring us something better, and make sure the glasses are actually clean this time." Maya felt her face get hot, but she kept her voice steady. "Of course, sir. I'll bring you fresh glasses right away." As she walked away, she could hear him talking to his friends. "You can't expect these people to understand the difference between good and bad. They're just not raised with proper standards." The other customers at nearby tables were starting to look uncomfortable. An elderly couple at table 9 gave Maya a sympathetic smile when she passed by. The businessman at table 5 shook his head slightly, clearly annoyed by the loud complaints. Maya returned with new glasses and a different brand of water, this one even more expensive. She poured carefully, making sure not to spill even a drop. The man took a sip, made a face like he had tasted something terrible, and then nodded grudgingly. "I suppose this will have to do," he said, as if he was doing her a huge favor by accepting it. 20 minutes later, their appetizers arrived. Maya had personally checked each plate in the kitchen to make sure everything was perfect. The food looked beautiful, arranged like artwork on expensive china plates. She set the plates down carefully, explaining each dish as she had been trained to do. The salmon is prepared with a light dill sauce and served with seasonal vegetables. She began, but the man cut her off. This looks nothing like what I ordered, he said, pushing his plate away dramatically. I specifically asked for the salmon to be cooked medium rare, and this is clearly overcooked. Maya looked at the salmon, which was cooked exactly as he had requested. She had written down his order word for word, and she had double-checked with the chef. Sir, I can have the kitchen prepare a new one if you'd prefer it cooked differently. That's not the point, the man said, his voice getting louder. The point is that you obviously weren't listening when I placed my order. This is exactly the kind of careless service I've come to expect from places like this. His two friends nodded in agreement, though Maya noticed they were both eating their own appetizers without any complaints. One of them even seemed to be enjoying his meal quite a bit. I apologize for any confusion, Maya said, reaching for his plate. Let me take this back to the kitchen right away. But as she reached for the plate, the man pulled it back toward himself. Actually, I'll eat it this time, but I expect you to pay more attention when we order our main courses. Some of us have important business to discuss, and we don't have time to keep correcting your mistakes. Maya nodded and walked away, feeling like everyone in the restaurant was watching her. Her hands were shaking slightly as she checked on her other tables. The retired judge's wife asked if she was okay, and Maya had to force a smile and pretend everything was fine. The worst part was that other customers were starting to notice the commotion. A young couple at table 6 kept glancing over at table 12 with worried expressions. The group of doctors had stopped their conversation to listen to the loud complaints. Maya could see people whispering to each other, and she felt mortified. When it came time to serve the main courses, Maya was extra careful. She had spoken personally with the head chef, who assured her that every dish was prepared exactly as ordered. She carried the plates out with steady hands, determined not to give the man any reason to complain, but it didn't matter how careful she was. This steak is completely wrong, the man declared before he had even cut into it. I ordered it medium rare, and this is practically raw. Are you trying to make me sick? Maya stared at the steak, which looked perfectly cooked to her. The chef had even used a thermometer to make sure the temperature was exactly right. Sir, would you like me to have it cooked a little longer? A little longer? The man repeated, his voice dripping with sarcasm. This entire meal has been a disaster from start to finish. First the water, then the appetizer, now this. I'm starting to think you people don't know how to run a proper restaurant. By now, the entire dining room had gone quiet. Conversations at other tables had stopped, and everyone was looking in their direction. Maya felt like she was standing on a stage with a spotlight shining on her, except instead of applause, she was getting stares of pity and embarrassment. I'm very sorry about the confusion with your meal, Maya said, trying to keep her voice from shaking. Let me speak with the manager about getting everything fixed for you. The manager? The man laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the quiet restaurant. What's the manager going to do? Train you how to do your job properly? Some people just aren't cut out for this kind of work. His friends chuckled at this comment, and Maya felt tears starting to form in her eyes. She blinked them back quickly, determined not to cry in front of everyone. The situation got worse when the man started making loud comments about her appearance and her abilities. Look at her, he said to his friends, but loud enough for half the restaurant to hear. Probably never been anywhere nicer than a fast food place before working here. No wonder she doesn't know how to handle real customers. Maya wanted to tell him that she had been working at Romano's for 2 years, that she had served hundreds of satisfied customers, that she was studying at one of the best music schools in the country, but she knew that defending herself would only make things worse. Instead, she stood there quietly while he continued his verbal assault. He complained about her posture, her voice, even the way she held her notepad. Every word was designed to make her feel small and worthless, and unfortunately, it was working. Other customers were starting to look angry now, but not at Maya. The elderly couple at table 9 was whispering furiously to each other, clearly upset by what they were witnessing. The businessman at table 5 had stopped eating entirely, and was glaring at table 12 with obvious disgust. But the man didn't seem to care that he was making everyone else uncomfortable. If anything, he seemed to be enjoying the attention. He was like a performer putting on a show, except his entertainment came from humiliating someone who couldn't fight back. "You know what your problem is?" he continued, pointing his finger at Maya like she was a child being scolded. "People like you think you can just smile and pretend to be professional, but you don't have what it takes to work in a place like this. This restaurant serves important people, successful people, and you clearly don't understand that level of excellence." Maya felt like the room was spinning around her. She had dealt with difficult customers before, but nothing like this. This wasn't just about the food or the service anymore. This had become personal, and she didn't know how to make it stop. Maya thought the worst was over. She had endured nearly 2 hours of constant criticism and unreasonable demands from table 12. Her feet ached from the extra trips back and forth to the kitchen, and her face hurt from forcing fake smiles. But she told herself that the evening was almost finished. Soon they would pay their bill and leave, and she could finally breathe normally again. She was wrong. The man at table 12 had ordered dessert, which seemed like a good sign. Maybe he was finally satisfied with something. Maya carefully carried out 3 plates of the restaurant's signature chocolate soufflé, each one perfectly risen and dusted with powdered sugar. The desserts looked like tiny works of art. "Here are your chocolate soufflés," Maya said softly, setting the plates down with extra care. "Please enjoy them while they're still warm." For a moment, everything seemed normal. The man picked up his spoon and took a small bite. Maya started to walk away, thinking she might actually make it through the rest of the evening without any more drama. Then she heard the crash. Maya spun around to see red wine spreading across the white tablecloth like blood. The man's wine glass lay on its side, the expensive liquid dripping onto the floor and staining Maya's black uniform. Her heart sank as she realized what had happened. "Oh no," she said, rushing back to the table. "Let me clean that up right away." But as she reached for napkins to clean up the mess, the man's voice stopped her cold. "Look what you've done now," he said loudly, his voice carrying across the entire restaurant. "You bumped into my arm and made me spill my wine." Maya stared at him in confusion. She hadn't been anywhere near his arm. She had been walking away from the table when the glass fell. But before she could say anything, he continued his accusation. "This is unbelievable," he announced to the entire dining room. "Not only can this girl not take a proper order or serve food correctly, but now she's so clumsy she's causing me to spill wine all over myself." Maya felt her cheeks burning with embarrassment and anger. She knew she hadn't caused the spill, but contradicting a customer, especially one this wealthy and influential, could cost her job. She needed this job. Without it, she couldn't afford to finish her final semester at music school. "I'm very sorry about the spill," she said quietly, kneeling down to clean up the wine from the floor. "Let me get this cleaned up and bring you a fresh glass." As she worked on her hands and knees wiping up the sticky wine, she could hear the man talking to his friends above her. "This is exactly what I'm talking about," he said. "You hire people who have no business working in a place like this. And this is what happens. No training, no class, no common sense." Maya's hands were shaking as she soaked up the wine with white napkins that quickly turned pink. She had been a good waitress for 2 years. She had never had a single complaint from any other customer. Her manager had even praised her for her professionalism and attention to detail. But now, kneeling on the floor while this man talked about her like she was garbage, she felt worthless. When she stood up, wine staining her uniform and her dignity, in tatters, she expected the man to at least acknowledge her apology. Instead, he did something that shocked everyone in the restaurant. He pulled out his wallet and removed a $20 bill, waving it in the air like it was a flag. "Here," he said loudly, making sure everyone could see the money. "This is probably more than you make in tips all week. Consider it payment for entertainment, because watching you struggle through this evening has been quite amusing." The entire restaurant had gone completely silent. Even the kitchen staff had stopped working to listen to what was happening in the dining room. Maya could feel dozens of eyes watching her, waiting to see what she would do. The $20 fluttered in the man's hand like an insult wrapped in green paper. Maya stared at it, feeling something break inside her chest. This wasn't just about bad service or difficult customers anymore. This was about human dignity, about treating another person with basic respect. "Sir?" Maya said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't need your money." The man laughed, a cold sound that echoed through the silent restaurant. "Oh, you don't need money? That's rich? Look at you. Look at this uniform, these cheap shoes, that desperate smile you've been wearing all night. Everything about you screams that you need every dollar you can get." Maya felt tears starting to form in her eyes, but she blinked them back. She refused to cry in front of this man, in front of all these people who were watching her like she was some kind of circus act. But the man wasn't finished with her yet. He stood up from his chair, towering over her, and that's when things went from bad to unforgivable. Without warning, he reached out and grabbed Maya's wrist, his fingers digging into her skin hard enough to leave marks. "You know what your real problem is?" he hissed, his face inches from hers. "People like you will never amount to anything, because you don't have what it takes. You don't have class, you don't have education, and you certainly don't have talent. You're destined to serve people like me for the rest of your pathetic life." Maya could smell the wine on his breath and see the cruel satisfaction in his eyes. His grip on her wrist was tight, almost painful, and she realized with growing alarm that this situation had crossed a line from verbal abuse to something much worse. "Sir," she said, trying to keep her voice steady, "I need you to let go of my wrist." But instead of releasing her, his grip tightened. The other customers were shifting uncomfortably in their seats, clearly disturbed by what they were witnessing. A few people had pulled out their phones, though whether to call for help or record the incident, Maya couldn't tell. "Let go of what?" the man said mockingly. "I'm just trying to teach you a valuable lesson about knowing your place in the world. Some people are born to lead, to build empires, to make important decisions. And some people," he squeezed her wrist harder, "are born to serve." Maya could feel panic rising in her throat. This man was stronger than her, wealthier than her, and clearly had no problem using his power to hurt her. She looked around the restaurant desperately, hoping someone would help her, but most of the other customers seemed frozen in shock. Finally, she found her voice again. "Please let go of my wrist," she said more firmly. "You're hurting me." The man's eyes gleamed with satisfaction at her admission of pain. He held on to her for a few more seconds, just to prove that he could, before finally releasing her with a dismissive shove that nearly sent her stumbling backward. "There," he said, settling back into his chair like nothing had happened. "Now maybe you'll remember to be more careful next time. What are you going to do about it anyway? Cry? Call your manager? Face the facts, sweetheart. In the real world, you're nothing. You're nobody. And no matter how hard you try or how much you dream, you'll always be exactly what you are right now. A nobody serving somebody." Maya stood there, rubbing her wrist where his fingers had dug into her skin. She could feel the weight of everyone's stares, the mixture of pity and curiosity from the other diners. Some looked angry on her behalf. Others seemed embarrassed to be witnessing such a scene. But all of them were watching her, waiting to see what she would do next. The man leaned back in his chair with a satisfied smirk, clearly expecting her to shuffle away defeated, maybe even quit on the spot. His friends were nodding in agreement with his harsh words, enjoying the show they had helped create. But something had changed in Maya during those terrible moments when he had grabbed her wrist. Something had shifted inside her, like a door opening in her mind. She was tired of being treated like she was invisible, like she didn't matter, like her dreams and her struggles meant nothing. She looked around the restaurant one more time, at all the faces watching her with curiosity and concern. Then she looked down at her hands, the same hands that this man had dismissed as worthless, the same hands that carried plates and cleaned tables and counted tips. What he didn't know was that these hands held secrets. These hands held power that he couldn't imagine, and Maya was about to show him exactly what she was capable of. Maya stood there for what felt like forever, but was probably only a few seconds. The restaurant was so quiet she could hear the soft jazz music playing in the background, the gentle clink of silverware from the few customers who were still brave. enough to continue eating and her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. She looked down at her wrist where the man's fingers had left red marks on her skin. Then she looked at the wine stain on her uniform, the $20 bill still clutched in his hand like some kind of cruel trophy, and finally at his smug face as he waited for her to walk away in defeat. But Maya wasn't thinking about walking away anymore. She was thinking about something else entirely. She straightened her shoulders and took a deep breath. When she spoke, her voice was different than it had been all evening. It was calm, steady, and somehow stronger than before. "You're right about one thing, sir," Maya said, loud enough for everyone in the restaurant to hear her clearly. "I am just a waitress here. I do carry plates, I do clean tables, and I do serve people like you every single day." The man's smirk grew wider, thinking he had finally broken her spirit completely. His friends leaned back in their chairs, satisfied that their entertainment for the evening was coming to the conclusion they had expected. "But you're wrong about everything else," Maya continued, and something in her tone made the man's expression change slightly. "You're wrong about who I am, and you're wrong about what I'm capable of." Before anyone could respond, Maya turned and walked away from table 12. But instead of heading toward the kitchen or the employee break room like everyone expected, she walked toward the corner of the restaurant where a beautiful black piano sat quietly under soft lighting. The piano was a gorgeous instrument, a baby, grand that the restaurant's owner had bought years ago for special occasions. Most nights it sat silent and ignored, used more as an elegant decoration than an actual musical instrument. Maya had walked past it hundreds of times during her shifts, always admiring its polished surface and imagining what it would feel like to play it. "Maya, what are you doing?" called out the restaurant manager, David, his voice filled with concern and confusion. He had been watching the situation at table 12 with growing alarm, unsure of how to handle such a wealthy and influential customer who was clearly being abusive. Maya didn't answer David's question directly. Instead, she turned to face the entire dining room. Every single person in the restaurant was staring at her now, their conversations forgotten, their meals growing cold on their plates. "Ladies and gentlemen," Maya said, her voice carrying clearly through the silent room, "I'd like to dedicate this performance to everyone who has ever been told they're not good enough, not smart enough, or not talented enough to achieve their dreams." The wealthy man at table 12 stood up abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "What do you think you're doing?" he demanded. "You can't just abandon your tables to play around with that piano. This is a restaurant, not a concert hall." Maya looked directly at him, and for the first time all evening she wasn't afraid of what she saw in his eyes. "Sir, my shift ends in exactly 43 minutes. After that, I have a rehearsal with the City Philharmonic Orchestra. But, right now, I think everyone here deserves to hear what someone like me can actually do." She sat down at the piano bench and adjusted her position, her fingers hovering over the keys for just a moment. The restaurant was so quiet that people seemed to be holding their breath. Even the kitchen staff had stopped working and were peeking out through the service window to see what was happening. Maya closed her eyes and let her fingers find their way to the keys. The first notes of Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2 filled the air, and the transformation in the room was immediate and magical. The music that poured from the piano was nothing like the gentle background jazz that usually played in Romanos. This was powerful, complex, emotionally overwhelming music that demanded attention. Maya's fingers moved across the keys with incredible speed and precision, handling passages that most amateur pianists couldn't even dream of attempting. But it wasn't just the technical skill that left everyone speechless. It was the emotion behind every note. Maya was pouring years of frustration, dreams, hard work, and determination into this performance. Every late night spent practicing instead of sleeping, every dollar saved for school instead of spent on herself, every moment of being treated like she was invisible or unimportant, all of it was flowing through her fingers and into the music. The wealthy man at table 12 had sat back down, his mouth hanging open in shock. His crude comments and cruel laughter had been replaced by stunned silence. The $20 bill he had been waving around so mockingly was now crumpled in his fist. forgotten. Around the restaurant, other customers were having their own moments of realization. The elderly couple at table 9 were holding hands, tears streaming down their faces as they listened to the beautiful music. The group of doctors had stopped their conversation entirely, completely captivated by Maya's performance. Even the businessman who had been working on his laptop all evening had closed it and was giving Maya his full attention. Maya's fingers danced across the keys, moving from gentle, flowing passages to powerful, thunderous sections that seemed to shake the very walls of the restaurant. This was music that belonged in concert halls, performed by world-class musicians in front of audiences who paid hundreds of dollars for tickets. And yet here it was, being played by a waitress in a wine-stained uniform, in a restaurant where most people came to see and be seen rather than to experience true art. As the performance continued, people began to remember things they had read or heard about recently. The businessman at table 5 pulled out his phone and started searching for something, his eyes growing wide as he read. The elderly woman at table 9 whispered something to her husband, who nodded in recognition. "Wait," someone said quietly, from across the room. "Isn't that the young pianist who won the international competition last month?" "I think you're right," another voice responded. "Maya Rodriguez, she was in the arts section of the newspaper just last week." "She's performing with the symphony next month," added another customer. "The tickets sold out in less than an hour." Whispers spread through the restaurant as people began to realize exactly who had been serving their tables all evening. This wasn't just any waitress who happened to know how to play piano. This was Maya Rodriguez, one of the most promising young classical musicians in the country, someone who had been featured in magazines and newspapers, someone whose talent was being recognized by the most prestigious musical institutions in the world. Maya continued playing, completely lost in the music now. Her eyes were closed and her whole body moved with the rhythm and emotion of the piece. This was where she belonged. This was who she really was. Not just a waitress trying to make ends meet, but an artist, a musician, someone with a gift that could move people to tears and change their entire perspective on what was possible. The music built to a crescendo that seemed to fill every corner of the restaurant, every heart of every person listening. When Maya finally played the last note and lifted her hands from the keys, the silence that followed was different from the silence that had preceded her performance. This wasn't the uncomfortable quiet of people watching a confrontation. This was the awed silence of people who had just witnessed something truly extraordinary. Then the applause began. The applause started slowly with just one person clapping. Then another joined in and another, until the entire restaurant erupted in thunderous applause that seemed to shake the crystal chandeliers overhead. People weren't just clapping politely, like they might after a nice dinner performance. They were giving Maya a standing ovation, the kind reserved for world-class artists after life-changing performances. Maya opened her eyes and looked out at the room full of people on their feet, applauding with genuine enthusiasm and amazement. She had performed in concert halls before, but somehow this felt different, more personal, more real. These people had just witnessed her transformation from someone they thought was just a waitress into someone they now recognized as a true artist. The elderly couple at table 9 was crying openly, still clapping despite their tears. The businessman at table 5 was shaking his head in amazement, as if he couldn't believe what he had just heard. Even some of the kitchen staff had come out from the back, their chef hats still on, applauding along with everyone else. But the most dramatic change was happening at table 12. The wealthy man who had spent the entire evening humiliating Maya now sat frozen in his chair, his face a mixture of shock, confusion, and growing embarrassment. The confident smirk he had worn all night was completely gone, replaced by the dawning realization that he had just spent 2 hours insulting one of the most talented musicians in the city. His friends weren't laughing anymore either. They were looking around the restaurant nervously, suddenly aware that every other customer was staring at their table with expressions of disgust and disapproval. The whispers that had started during Maya's performance were getting louder now, and none of them were flattering. "Isn't that the guy who was being so rude to her all evening?" Someone said loud enough for everyone to hear. "Can you believe he treated her that way? another voice added. She's performing at Lincoln Center next month. I read about her in the arts magazine last week, an older woman said to her dinner companion. She's considered one of the most promising young pianists in the world. Maya stood up from the piano bench and smoothed down her wine-stained uniform. The applause was still continuing, but she raised her hand gently to quiet the room. She had something she wanted to say. Thank you, Maya said, her voice carrying clearly through the restaurant. That was Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2, one of my favorite pieces to perform. She walked back toward table 12, but this time her steps were confident and purposeful. She wasn't the nervous, apologetic waitress who had been trying to please these men all evening. She was Maya Rodriguez, accomplished musician, scholarship student, and someone who had worked incredibly hard to get where she was. The wealthy man seemed to shrink in his chair as she approached. His earlier arrogance had evaporated completely, replaced by the uncomfortable realization that he had made a terrible mistake. You were right about one thing earlier, Maya said, stopping beside their table. I am just a waitress here, but you were wrong about pretty much everything else. She reached into her apron pocket and pulled out her phone, scrolling to a recent news article about her upcoming performance. She held it up so the man could see the headline, Local music student to debut with symphony orchestra and sold out. Performance. My shift here ends in 37 minutes, Maya continued, her voice calm and steady. After that, I have a rehearsal with the Philharmonic Orchestra. In 6 weeks, I'll be performing the same piece at Lincoln Center with the New York Symphony. The tickets are $300 each, and they sold out in less than 2 hours. The man's face was turning red, but not with anger this time. It was embarrassment, pure and simple. He opened his mouth as if to say something, but no words came out. Maya wasn't finished yet. You spent this entire evening telling me that people like me will never amount to anything, she said. You said I don't have class, education, or talent. You said I'm destined to serve people like you for the rest of my life. She paused and looked around the restaurant, where every single person was still watching this incredible scene unfold. For your information, I'm graduating summa cum laude from the Conservatory of Music in 4 months. I've won 3 international piano competitions in the past 2 years. I've been offered full scholarships to continue my master's degree at 3 different prestigious music schools. And after my debut performance next month, I'll be going on tour with some of the most respected orchestras in the world. The silence in the restaurant was complete now. Even the background music had been turned off so everyone could hear every word Maya was saying. But you know what the most interesting part is? Maya continued. I've been working here for 2 years, serving hundreds of customers, and not once has anyone else treated me the way you did tonight. Most people understand that being kind and respectful to others costs nothing, regardless of someone's job or circumstances. The man finally found his voice, but it came out as barely a whisper. I didn't know. You didn't know because you didn't bother to find out, Maya replied. You looked at my uniform and made assumptions about who I am and what I'm worth. You decided that because I serve tables, I must not have any other talents or dreams or accomplishments. Around the restaurant, other customers were nodding in agreement. Several people had their phones out, and Maya realized they had probably been recording parts of this conversation. The man seemed to realize this too, and his face grew even redder. David, the restaurant manager, approached their table with a complicated expression on his face. He had watched the entire evening unfold, and Maya could tell he was torn between protecting his employee and avoiding conflict with wealthy customers. Maya, David said quietly, that was absolutely incredible. I had no idea you were so talented. Thank you, Maya replied. And don't worry about any of this affecting my job. I know you're in a difficult position. But before David could respond, something unexpected happened. Customers throughout the restaurant began approaching Maya, but not to complain or cause more drama. They were coming to congratulate her and to express their admiration for both her musical talent and the grace she had shown under pressure. The Bais, or elderly couple from table 9, was first. My dear, the woman said, taking Maya's hands in hers, That was the most beautiful music I've heard in years. And the way you handled yourself tonight? You should be very proud. You have a gift. Her husband added, Don't let anyone ever make you feel like you're not extraordinary. The businessman from Table 5 stepped forward next. I'm actually on the board of the Arts Foundation, he said, handing Maya his business card. We provide grants to promising young musicians. I'd like to discuss some opportunities with you. One by one, other customers approached Maya with similar offers of support, encouragement, and genuine admiration. A woman who owned an art gallery wanted to host a fundraising concert for Maya's tour. A retired music teacher offered to help her prepare for auditions. Even some of the other servers came over to tell Maya how inspired they were by her performance. Through all of this, the man at table 12 sat in stunned silence, watching his victim transform into the center of positive attention and respect. His friends had stopped trying to defend him and were looking increasingly uncomfortable with the situation. Finally, Maya turned back to face him one last time. You asked me earlier what I was going to do about the way you treated me, she said. You suggested I might cry or call my manager or just accept that I'm nobody. She smiled, and it was the first genuine smile she had worn all evening. Instead, I decided to show you exactly who I am and what I'm capable of. The tickets for my Lincoln Center performance are available online if you're interested in seeing what people like me can actually accomplish. Though I should mention, they're a bit more expensive than that $20 bill you were waving around earlier. With that, Maya walked away from table 12 for the final time, surrounded by new friends and supporters who had witnessed something truly special. Behind her, the wealthy man sat alone with his embarrassment and the growing realization that money and power mean nothing when you use them to hurt others. The evening that had started as his attempt to humiliate someone he saw as beneath him had ended with him being the one who looked small, cruel, and ultimately powerless in the face of real talent and dignity.